music or anything. Okay. The creaking, that's our theme song.
I was just about to say that.
Which chair?
That chair is less squeaky.
Oh. Well, let's switch chairs. Excellent. We are talking about our childhood. Except I'm not going to talk about the sad parts of my childhood because nobody wants to cry. No. And influential moments, right? That was your plan? That's our plan.
That's the plan.
Did you have one that jumped out at you?
No.
Should we lead right into that, or should we have a little bit of chitty chat?
It seemed like a good thing, like a good topic, because there are people that, like, I went to the zoo when I was 10 and saw a zebra and decided I wanted to work with zebras. But then when I thought about it, I didn't actually ever have any of those moments. So, there you go. Take it, hon.
No, yeah, to be perfectly honest, I'm completely gassed from the day. So I don't know that I've got much to follow through. Though I will say that I've definitely had some big influential moments in my childhood. But none of them drove me professionally, I guess. What about you?
Well, I've kind of always been the same with ever since I was younger. I kind of wanted to learn everything. I never wanted to pick just one thing. So when I was a little kid, my grandmother, she would indulge me. She would get me magician sets and doctor sets and all kinds of different sets. She taught me how to sew. She taught me how to bake. Anything I could learn, I learned how to paint ceramics. I just loved learning new creative ways to do things, and I'm still the same way. I loved going outside and finding lizards and learning about different types of flowers, and I still love botany and zoology and meteorology. I just kind of am all over the place. So I still do the same thing with Emmett now for homeschool.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm a bit of a jack of all trades in that way as well, which definitely lends itself to homeschooling, especially homeschooling a middle schooler and younger. So maybe it was all meant to be.
I guess career-wise, my dad, working with him on my first clubhouse, maybe was, I don't know, maybe made me lean more towards that. Half of my high school was taking drafting classes for architecture, so I do that for the family business. I really liked building the clubhouse.
Right. Career-wise, I just didn't have a lot of direction. I think nothing jumped out at me. I'd say the most influential, there weren't single moments, but like I had some pretty influential relationships with people. Because parents are parents, and they're gonna influence a kid in a very specific way. But when I had positive relationships with other adults, I was able to sort of look at them and see if I would be happy being that. Obviously there's always a lot of idolizing when you're younger. But I definitely have a lot of great relationships with people. So the entrepreneurial side of things resonated with me a lot. But other than that, I'm not sure that I had anything hugely, anything that affected me a lot in regards to professions.
It's interesting you say that, because the first chess tournament that I went to with the boys, and I met Mike, who knew you coming up through chess since you were 8 or whatever, and, I introduced myself, and I was like, I'm Russ's wife. And one of the, 2 comments that he said to me was, Russ was always meant to be a father. So I don't know what you gave off at 8 years old that said that, but apparently at that point in your life, it was also obvious that you should have children and be raising them.
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah.
know if Mike ever said that to you, though. So
I know he
that's
did. He
different.
didn't. It's okay you lost this game, Ross. You're just meant to be a father, not a chess player. Yeah, that never happened to me. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's true that I am doing my dream job, I suppose.
Or what you were meant to do.
Or what? Yeah, and those are different. So,
That's true.
yeah, unfortunately, never going to be happy. But yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I enjoy my job, but I didn't know that that's what I wanted to do until I was forced to do it.
Right, and you were a grown-up, basically, right?
I don't know if 22 is a grown-up, but...
I wouldn't look at a 22-year-old today and say it's a grown-up, but...
I didn't feel like a grown-up
There
at
was-
22 either.
There was a time I thought a 22-year-old was a grown-up. There was a time I thought a 33-year-old was a grown-up, but that's definitely not true either.
There was
So-
a time I thought a 17-year-old was a grown-up, because that was, like, way older than I was.
Right, constantly cooler than me. They, like, make no mistakes ever.
They can drive.
Right. So, I guess that perspective, that's a ever-moving goalpost, right? Nobody's ever grown.
Always learning, always trying new things.
Yeah, which, yeah, that lines up with you, right? And what you like to do. So
Yeah.
you do a bunch of the DIY stuff, which is not only in your field of architecture.
Yeah, and I really love that. I love exploring new skills. So, I mean, my dream job would be traveling all over the world and meeting professionals in their professions to learn about their professions.
So like a female Mike Rowe.
They don't have any dirty professions, necessarily.
Well, yeah, that's fine. Not all
Well,
of them.
I totally wanted to be a paleontologist for like a year of my childhood.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe you just need a really successful podcast that will fund your traveling to places and meeting new
Right?
people.
I keep wishing I'll win the lottery, but you know, everyone wishes that.
It's funny. I think there are just people are just different types of creators, really. And so we've got a lot of friends and some family that are computer programmers, software engineers. And so, what are you doing?
I feel like we're not using our space efficiently.
Weird.
Go ahead.
Inside of that profession, obviously they are creating things, but the way they create the thing is not always satisfying, especially in the government contract world of things. They will sometimes just never get to a finished product, or they won't finish the product, or the product won't be to their goals. So a lot of people in that field will often take to creating a thing that's a little more tactile, I suppose. Wood carving, right?
Why are you joking me?
Paul.
Oh, it's like I've never carved wood.
So wood carving's one thing.
Yeah.
Just building with your hands is a common hobby as it links to the software engineers. And I wonder if that's true. What?
How many software engineers do you know that do wood carving?
Not necessarily wood carving, but I think creating a physical
I see what you're saying.
object,
Okay.
because they don't get to meet that. They are creators,
Got
but
it.
they don't get to meet that. They don't get to satisfy that itch because of the
They don't
nature
get that
of their
finished
profession.
product in their hands.
Right, yeah. So it just feels really different. Even if they were to take a thing beginning to end and be able to interact with it on a digital level, it's just my understanding is that it doesn't satisfy. And I
I
wonder
can
if that's
definitely see that.
true.
Because,
Yeah.
like with architecture, I love doing it, but I couldn't see myself working at an architecture firm because I like to do the drawings for my family, and then I go and I demo the house and I help with the house building. So I like having it come to life and be a part of the building process too.
Yeah, so I've never, I guess I haven't spoken with a lot of people in a profession that does have a physical result coming from it. I wonder if there's a reverse, if there's a draw away from that, a draw to something a little more intellectual as their hobby.
Now I'm trying to think if I know anybody that's in a profession like that and what they do on the side.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to, I guess part of me being a everyone can work together perspective of things is that everyone is just going after the same goal, but we've got all these strange influences, and obviously even just working a job runs so counter to everything it feels like to be a human, even. Right, jobs just you're devoting such an enormous portion of your life to things that are not your ultimate aim necessarily, and so it feels like emotionally we can't be completely satisfied because of that. I guess I don't know. I go too
I
far
think,
off the rails.
oh no, I can see that continuing. I really like the idea of a community frame of mind where a project is a project. We all pitch in what we can and we all get that time off too to do other things. Like that's kind of how my family is based. I mean, majority of the work is done by my father, but we all pitch in with the building and the demo and the picking up tools and working on the website, and we all, do that all together. But then we also all get to take vacations at the same time, which is why homeschooling's so great because, he'll come home from work on a Friday and be like, let's go camping. And we all get that break together and all get to do that together. So it's important to be able to find a balance. Most people don't get to have that with a regular job. But when you have a family business like that where you can kind of make your own schedule, it works out really well.
Yeah, but it really seems like that should just. It would be nice if that was the default.
Yeah, but
there's so many people that get in a situation where, they've come home from work and they're just gassed. They're done. They don't want to do anything. But I don't think we're necessarily designed to just like be idle. Right? It's spending such a large portion of your day not doing the thing you want to be doing is really exhausting. And so that's what leads people to this leisure time that is not the traditional leisure time, right? So sitting in front of a television or laying down on a couch and just doing nothing. That is not what leisure time has always been, I guess. And so it's like people are being, I don't know, it's like time is just being siphoned out of them. But because of this doing the same thing eternally, essentially, in a job. So your job has a lot of things that change, comes with seasons and stuff. And so that has to come with a lot more satisfaction than if you were just going in, doing the same thing for 8 hours,
Yes.
clocking out.
Well, I mean, that's two different things. I don't do the same thing for 8 hours because every day is different. But I also work on a cycle. So I know at the end of the semester, my product is finished and I'm done. And then I get to reset again. So I know when the end is.
Right. So it's like a long-term creation process, but it's not Sisyphus, right? Like you're not rolling a boulder. You're not working in a factory.
Although there are aspects of my job that feel like that. oh, I did all this work and I'm passing it up, and it just gets siphoned into a black hole of where did that go? But working with the students is definitely a satisfying thing, and it comes to an end. There's a definite end to it.
Right. Yeah, you can pocket those relationships away, for good or for bad. You've engaged with these people. You've worked out that relationship and brought it to a healthy conclusion. So that's nice. That feels right. So, and I guess with the right perspective, most jobs can have that same. Even working retail, each customer could be that healthy conclusion. But
yeah, I guess it really just depends on how you feel about the job, not necessarily the job itself, because everybody's going to feel different in that job. Like, some people are really good with conversation, so being someone who's on the phone all day with customers, that might not be a problem for them. But other people who hate talking on the phone are going to hate that job. So
yeah, that's true. And I guess it just does take it takes a culture that lines up with the people's needs at that time, right? If there weren't a phone job, all of these social creatures would be in a difficult place. I guess they may have to accept jobs that don't play to their personal needs. So
yeah,
I think there's also, you have to be okay with what it is that you're good at and what you want to do. Because I think now this is a conversation community college faculty have all the time. There's this big push for everybody to go to college, but should everybody go to college? College is good and wonderful, but you don't have to go to college to have a successful job, career that you feel satisfied, that you enjoy, that you can support yourself with. So maybe you're not meant to be, a PhD in history or a medical doctor or whatever. If you are, that's great, and you should have every opportunity, but that's not. And I've seen, especially when I taught the human anatomy and physiology classes, there were a number of students, particularly females in the 18 to 22 bracket, that were going into it because they had been told that nursing was a good career. And it is. But I don't think they were meant to be nurses for multiple reasons. And they weren't getting A's in the class, let's just say that, and they didn't seem particularly interested in the material. And I remember having a conversation with one student, and she was pulling a C, but her parents wanted her to do this because her mother was a nurse and her aunt was a nurse and everybody was a nurse. And I was like, well, what do you like to do? And she worked at a shoe store and was a manager and loved it. Loved working with the customers, loved working with her employees that were under her. And she's like, I'd kind of like to just move up, and I was like, then maybe you should do that. That's a thing you love to do and you could support yourself with. Not everybody has to be a nurse. But when you have everybody important in your life telling you this is what you need to do, it can be hard to try to hoe a different road there.
yeah. A lot of times it's it's not even the monetary stuff. It's just the other people's acclaim, I suppose. Just seeking that type of verbal encouragement from everyone around you, which it sounds like that, or the series of students that you're discussing. That's what you fall into. So even I find myself, though I don't have a lot of success as a writer, but I often find that I get in my own way because before I'm even done writing something, I'm thinking about how it will be received, and a lot of times that becomes the focal point and not the writing process. So in that vein, what I'd be interested in really, professionally, my goal would be to just stand out in a crowd and have people say good things about me. So, and I don't think you get paid money for that. I don't know. So, yeah, that might just be cultural. That we're in a place. I don't want to be old manish, but the generation of you're the best is happened pretty strong. And I don't know if that's why I am the way that I am, but
because you grew up in that generation.
Yeah,
Everybody got the soccer trophy.
Well, it's not all the soccer trophy thing. I just constantly need this like reinforcement.
I think that's just you.
Okay, so it's just
don't try to blanket an entire generation. That is just you.
I
So
know,
I'm doing a good job at that.
I can kind of see your point, like both of you with that. Like when I went to public school. I was never homeschooled, and I got really good grades, and I was like terrified if I didn't get good grades. Like I felt awful, and I ended up graduating with honors, and everyone, was pushing me to go to college for a certain thing, or, that I had to get it done quickly. I'm still not done with college. And I like it better because I didn't like all the stress in high school of it having to be one thing. I didn't really want to go to college for architecture because that seemed like such a long time to go when I already knew what I needed to know to do my current job. So instead, I like going to college and learning classes that I'm interested in. Like, I love learning, which we have already talked about. But I love going to a class and learning new things. But I don't really know what thing I want to do just to get a degree. So it's like something I like to continually work on until I eventually get there.
That's what I was doing. Out of high school, been married a couple of years, I guess. Right?
When what?
When I just went and no intention of ever getting a degree, but take some classes, and it was so much more satisfying. That form of being a student was so much more satisfying than anything that I did in
High school?
the lower scholastic stuff. Yeah, like high school, middle school. I don't remember my elementary school. That entire part of my past is it's just a blank. But yeah, and it's just so much more. And at some point, and it took a really long time for me to finally realize the game going on, I guess, when I was in high school. And there are people that recognize that and then go towards, oh, okay, so I understand, and I'm going to be successful because I understand it. For me, I understand it now, so I know exactly what I can't do. And so I did a great job of making friends with the teachers. Like, I had positive relationships with my teachers. I was kind of a clown, but not. I tried not to be too disruptive. But I basically just didn't do the work. And I did only what needed to be done. I did plenty of makeup stuff. I knew they didn't want to fail me, and nobody wanted it. Nobody cared. So it's just I was going to show up, and
not
everything
disrupt
will
the
be
class.
fine. Right? Yeah. So yeah, I knew how to not be the jerk that makes the teacher want to fail you, and or kick you out of the class and force you to be.
I had a teacher that wanted to fail everybody because he wanted to show how good of a teacher he was. He was so hard. He said, if you're an A student, I'll know whether you're an A student because only an A student will pass this class. And it was Spanish, and I am not good at Spanish. I took it 1 year in high school because I was told I needed it to get into college, even though I had 3 years of sign language. And I hated that class. He was great outside of class. He was nice, and he was a really cool coach for one of the teams. But in class, it was just awful. And I had to stay after and get tutoring, and I passed that class with a BC, depending on, like which grading period it was. And I didn't ever want to take Spanish again, but I did try again in college, and I still didn't get it.
Yeah, I'm terrible with languages. I took 4 years of Spanish. I don't know how I passed the third year, because that's when, I think the fourth year is when you start to get into all the cultural stuff. But at 3, you're still learning a lot of conversational things. I have no idea how I passed, because I know nothing at all. My teacher used to wake me up, and I really wasn't a terrible student. I did sleep, and I'm kind of a dummy. I would sleep in the front row. I wouldn't like sneak into the back. I didn't go into class planning on sleeping, but sometimes the nap comes to you. Little afternoon siesta.
The teachers prefer if you sleep in the back, not the front.
Well, now I know. I'm
just telling you.
I should apologize to my Spanish teacher. Write her an email or something.
I don't think I ever slept in school. I did almost fall asleep once in a history course in college, but that was because I'd just gotten off of my bakery shift at 4 a.m.
Yeah, I don't know why. It was my I think it's Spanish 2 is the one I slept through the most. But I didn't usually sleep in class.
Was it the time of day?
It could have been. By high school, I had a study hall. I could take a good nap in. I don't know. I was up at 6 in the morning.
I know.
That's
I
really
don't
early.
understand high school at all, really. But whatever.
So, homeschool. When did you get up?
8:30? Because I Love Lucy came on at 9, and that's when I did my math.
Oh my god.
That's what time you got up when you were in high school? For homeschool?
Because I did my math while I watched I Love Lucy reruns, and they came on at 9 and 9:30.
That's awesome.
We're a late night family anyway.
We should do that with the boys. Duncan loves I Love Lucy.
Yes. Well, that was the concession when I was 10, and Dad wanted me to start doing math, was the math was really boring. So I'll do it, but I'm going to watch I Love Lucy while I do it, which was fine. So I read the lesson, worked the problems. I'd seen every I Love Lucy episode 1,000 times, so it wasn't like it was distracting.
Right. We should definitely do that.
I think I ate a soft pretzel and a cup of tea for breakfast every morning. It's all coming back to me now.
Wow. I didn't have any routines.
You had the routine of falling asleep in the shower before school.
I did. I would wake up at 6 to get to the bus at 7:15, and I'd take like a 30-minute shower, 25 minutes of which was me napping. It was terrible. It was hard to wake up.
I agree. I don't like to get up at 6 a.m. now, and I'm a fully made adult whose brain is not doing massive rewiring of the teenage years, so...
Yeah.
I used to stay up late and read and get in trouble for staying up late and reading, and then I would wake up by 5:30 and get ready for school and pack all my stuff for my extracurriculars, and then I would get to school after that. It took me a long time to get everything together, though.
Yeah, that was another thing I was terrible with. I didn't pack well.
You didn't what?
I didn't pack well. I didn't pack my clothes well. Like, I wore flip-flops and shorts all year just because I didn't check the weather ever. I never had pencils or paper. I was terrible.
You're a terrible student.
I don't know. I needed a
computer
friend to just help me out.
Didn't you have friends?
You needed a checklist.
Yeah, a good checklist might have done it. I would have lost the checklist.
Tape it on the front door. Before I leave the house, I should have.
Yeah. I guess it was never came to a head. Always had one more person I could borrow a pencil from. That's the problem.
I was that person.
And I appreciate you.
Yeah, I always overpacked. For cheerleading, I did competitive cheerleading at school and out of school. So I cheered for, I don't know, like 6 hours every day. And I had a bag that was full of everything that I needed for cheerleading, plus stuff that everyone else I thought might need, like tape for our wrists and first aid stuff, bandages, hairspray. Like, I always had everything in my bag. And then I also did tennis and gymnastics and dance. And I was part of physics club, and I did quite a few different clubs. I can't even remember them all now, but I always had a super, super busy schedule. Actually, there was a couple times, choir too. There was a couple times that I would be having a competition, and then I'd have to rush back to school to go do like a rehearsal or some other kind of thing. And a lot of the times I was on crutches. So it made things interesting.
So I believe pretty strongly that everybody has a sweet spirit animal, and yours has a high metabolism. I'm not confident I know what your spirit animal is, but it's definitely something with a high metabolism.
Well, I used to not sleep much, like at all. In high school, I would go like 3 weeks without like hardly sleeping, but like a few hours, like it was crazy. But I didn't feel tired. And I later found out that it was just a symptom of this syndrome that I have. And now my syndrome, once I got to a certain point of injuring myself, I started passing out, like fainting. So then I ended up with fatigue, and now I'm tired all the time. Catching up on that sleep I missed from high school.
Maybe it was worth it. You have more childhood flex points than most people. You can remember that time you were crutching through the hallway to get to your physics class theater.
Yeah, I was really good on crutches. I was on crutches a total of 14 times in high school.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah, 0 for me. 0 crutches.
In high school?
Yeah.
I mean, you've been on crutches since.
Right.
Like with your ACL and stuff.
Yeah, but not for very long.
Yeah, well, that's true.
It was just like surgery recovery crutches, but not. I could always hobble. When I tore the ACL, I may as well walk on it. Who cares?
That is not actually what you said.
What?
You just kind of screamed in pain.
No, I'm not. When it happened, when it actually, I wasn't. I'm a tough man. When it happened, it was very painful. This was not my childhood, but it might be a story worth sharing. So I blew up my left ACL playing basketball at the gym
At midnight.
and it was winter. It was so cold out. And
The perfect time for an ambulance. I'm so sorry.
Oh no!
I
they
drove
didn't
home.
call the ambulance.
Right. It was with basically the next best person. We called the front desk guy, and he came and he very responsibly put me in a rolly chair and rolly chaired me out to the car
Across
for me
the
to drive home.
icy parking lot.
Yeah. So it's winter. It's like 12:30 or 1 in the morning,
Oh
and
my
the
God.
parking lot is frozen over, and he can't control the rolly chair, and it's a downhill parking lot to the car, and I thought I was just gonna die because he's just like trying to steer me there, and I don't know. Maybe he's been trained. If someone injures themselves in the gym, you need to get them out of the gym as soon as possible, whatever they're willing to do.
Off of
Our
school
liability insurance doesn't cover this. So, but yeah, and then I drove home because it was.
Did you drive? Mason was with you.
I think my car was there though, so I'm pretty sure
Okay.
I drove, because it was my left leg and I drive a automatic. Anyway, so
I just remember Mason dragging you in the house, and
he did at least follow. He may have driven me home, but yeah, it was really, really uncomfortable. But long-term influence. I haven't played much basketball since, but I did play some What was that?
I'm just saying you're prone to injuries.
I am prone to injuries.
If you could not play so many sports that might injure you, that would be good.
I'm
Yeah.
prone to injuries as well, obviously.
I tore my hamstring doing an intimidating jump kick at my brother. That was
I shared that story in class.
It was awful because we were just getting ready to grapple, and I was just like, "I'm gonna get you, bigger brother." And I did like the crane
Flying
kick, like a
crane.
freight, like the stupid crane kick from the Karate Kid, and I just went, "Wah!" And I did a jump kick. And I've always been very flexible, so I was just like leg by my ear, and I landed. And as it turned out, I had torn my hamstring, which I knew I had torn my hamstring because I had previously torn my other hamstring playing football. and it felt exactly the same. So I didn't get to grapple with my brother. Totally would have won.
I had a lot of sprained ankles. I did injure my knee, tore some ligaments. I ripped my hip muscle off my hip bone, and I've broken my ribs twice. I've had chest wall strains. I broke my pinky. I tore my tendon in my elbow. I've sprained my neck twice. I think that's the summary of most of my like sports related injuries. I stepped on a rusty old nail once, but I wouldn't usually throw that in there.
It just muddles the water there. You want to have just the good sports injuries together. Yeah, I would say that my sports injuries are probably the most influential thing that my childhood did to me. That's terrible.
That is terrible.
My childhood shouldn't be doing things to me.
What did you learn from those sports injuries?
No, it's not what I learned. It's what I couldn't do anymore. I don't run very fast anymore. And I couldn't throw a football for years, and I still kind of can't. But boy, can I wing a dodgeball at a bunch of kids at the trampoline park.
But what of your injuries happened in your childhood? Like the hamstring from the football, but not the ACL.
The shoulders.
Not
The shoulders
other-
were the biggest.
shoulders, okay.
I didn't play football 4 years because of the shoulders. I had a lot of. It's all water under the bridge. It's not a big deal. Everybody's been injured, but I don't know. I think it mattered.
You don't want to talk about your injuries and try to get sympathy from people?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't like that.
Okay.
So, yeah. I don't know. Do you feel your childhood was better or worse? Like if you could take your childhood and replace it with a generic character from Andy Griffith's childhood, would you be better off?
No.
No, I'm pretty happy with my childhood. I had a really huge imagination. I had a hover mom who was always there when I got hurt. And then
Which was apparently often.
yeah. She was always there. I mean, I even broke my pinky in PE and she was at the school when it happened. So she was always nearby. And then I had my dad who was kind of like my idol for building. He still is. I loved seeing him make things and letting me help him. And my sister was an artist, so I learned how to draw from her. And I always had my grandmother and my grandfather nearby, and they, gave me anything I wanted. So they made it really fun and exciting. So yeah, I had a really good childhood, despite being sick and injured like half of my life.
Right. That's good, and what you mention is really good too. It's the relationships that are most important in regards to that. Because I guess bringing it back a little bit, the goal of the topic, why it came up, what are these influential moments in your childhood, is really just trying to help me rationalize our day-to-day. It's not how much math you do, it's that you get to do math in front of
Lucy. He remembers how much math they did.
Right, yeah. Well, and it's just, it really is just the people, right? And you can make up the difference. It seems like if you provide a healthy base for the kid to grow in, for a child to grow in, if they don't hit all the lessons, they're still going to be pretty darn okay. And I guess I want to keep saying that to myself over and over again because I get really anxious about it. But not so much that I don't still prioritize relationships. There's not a time that I've said, we're not going to see our friends if you don't finish your whatever. I've never said that, and I don't think I ever will. And even beyond that, I don't think I've ever said, sorry, we're busy doing math. I'm not going to play that board game you've asked to play with me. I don't think I've ever said that either. So
I would say that.
I know you. Yeah.
Well, math would take like 15 minutes.
Yeah, I
And then
guess
we can
that's
play
true.
the game. It's not like I'm blocking off 4 hours that we can't do something.
That is true.
Just saying.
I suppose if I feel I'm being manipulated, I will definitely no sir it. But in general, the philosophy being people before.
Yeah, Emmett and I, we have a set schedule for things. However, I'm also in a family that's based on spontaneity. So I'm used to being like, okay, we can totally move this to some other time. It does not have to happen right now. If Emmett wants to go to Chuck E. Cheese, I'm like, okay, we'll plan that for Fun Friday and we'll move these lessons to some other time or whatever. Or if my parents are like, hey, let's go down to Florida, okay, we'll move this, Um, I don't think I've ever had a problem moving school because he's always learning anyway. And I think that, like you said, we remember the relationships. I also think that we remember the feelings we have when things happen. We might not remember exactly what happened, but remember who we were with and how we felt. Like, I can't tell you how many vacations I've been on with my family. We're big on travel. I can't tell you when I went to Disney World the first time. I don't even remember what my first cruise was, but I remember the feeling of being with my family. That's the one thing I know I always have is my family. No matter how big I screw up, my family's always there.
Yeah, I mean that just seems right, I guess. It seems so hard to build the relationship given a tenth of the time, which is really what we would have if we chose to not homeschool. And I don't even know what type of job I would have. Possibly I would be working evenings because that plays to my strengths in regards to people.
Why wouldn't you work during the day? Then you'd be gone when the kids were gone.
Right. Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, yes, possibly it would be best for our family if I worked during the day. But if we switch to a two-income family, I may be able to make more money or get a better job that involved the evening. Anyway.
Is that just so you can lay around during the day while nobody's here and watch Star Trek?
Just don't talk about my past.
Okay. Just saying. A lot of Star Trek.
They're at 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock on some station.
I don't know.
Next
I was
Generation.
at my job.
I was going to my job. Sure. Everybody needs a little 3-hour warm-up with Next Generation. I would have never made it through without Picard. His wisdom taught me everything. What?
Nothing.
Don't judge me publicly. You judge me privately, please. So.
I try to remind Emmett about that because, sometimes he'll seem like he's not too into doing the homeschool. And I'm like, well, just remember, because you want to go to public school for a year, you're going to be there for 7 hours, come home, and have more schoolwork to do. So, because you end up with a bunch of homework.
Yeah, and the homework, you don't want to undermine the same reason about relationships. You don't want to undermine the teachers and say, oh, they don't really mean you need to do the homework, because...
But you don't.
Right, well, you don't. It would be very difficult for me. But I think I would tell them, yes, we have to do the homework, just to make that relationship honest with their teachers. It seems like you just have to do that, and there are some teachers out there that you're not going to successfully build a positive relationship with. But I would say most of them are trying to do something, and anything, if as a parent you look at your kid and say, your teacher's full of it, this homework is just busy work, it really, I don't know, it doesn't seem healthy.
It seems like it would take away from the respect that your kid has towards their teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, which would also then be taking away from the time that you might have with your kids. So.
Yeah, my mom, like I said, I wasn't homeschooled, I went to public school and I would come home and I'd have a ton of homework. Um, and she would sit down with me, and it was kind of like she became my teacher. And so sometimes when I'm homeschooling with Emmett, I feel like, you know what? My mom kind of did homeschool me in the afternoons when I got home from school before I had to go do all my sports, or after I got home from all my sports. Because sometimes in school, I couldn't really learn much. There's so many kids. The teacher, doesn't pay attention because there's so many kids that they have to teach. So having one-on-one, my mom doing flashcards with me and sitting down and explaining to me things I didn't understand, like that was really big on me.
Yeah, it's probably true too that your mom put in the same time that she would have put in if she were just homeschooling you. You know,
Yeah.
Short of a couple extra printouts that she would have done on her own time. But because it really is it's really efficient time wise. The amount, I mean, just going through a math lesson, that is more than we ever covered in a math class. If I'm ever able to actually think back to what I covered in math, typically full lesson, no way, right? Just going through a Saxon book, lesson 22 or whatever. I don't think we would have ever. It would have been do this, or we'll cover the words. I need you to do the problems when you get home, and that's an hour.
Well,
but it takes us 5 minutes. We're on our game.
Right. What I've found is just, at the college level, is the more people you have, the longer it takes. So if I'm teaching a class of 24, even just giving a lecture, never mind activities where we're breaking into groups, like just giving a lecture to 24 people takes longer than giving a lecture to 8 people. Because somebody's got a question, which is great. Like sometimes it leads to great discussions, but somebody's got a question and then somebody needs some clarification and then whatever. And even on my part, making sure that 24 people are engaged and on track takes longer than looking at 8 people and making sure they're engaged and on track. And then when I flip it to online, it's like a 50% time cut, because then I just make my video of exactly what I need to say. And that's just the lecture portion. Like obviously we have other online things that are going on, but just delivering the teaching message to a black hole of students is completely different. So there's so much time of just waiting for everybody to get on track. Like giving directions to 24 people instead of giving directions to 8, or giving directions to 1 kid and you can see whether they get it or not and then clarify if they don't, as opposed to this kid got it and now I have to explain it to these 3 and this one's, off in the weeds now because they already had it. And it's just like, this is not efficient. It's not efficient with adults. I can't imagine it being efficient with our children in a classroom.
And that's not taking into account travel time to and from school, travel time from every classroom, and that eats up a huge amount of time. So again, this is me just saying kind of out loud what I should be saying to myself internally, that it's okay that we're done after a very short amount of time in any given day. Not to mention, I do think we have our best conversations in the car, because they are finally bored enough to talk to me about the things that have been hanging over their head. Mm-hmm. Remember that word from the book that we were reading?
Right.
What's that even mean? Okay.
Then you're like, wait, what book?
Yeah.
I need context.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
We have some not having context issues, which usually means I use way too many words to answer it, because I have to answer the question very broadly. But
Emmett and I have definitely had some in-depth conversations in the car. Like I remember specifically was slavery, because he had just read something about it and he was confused because he thought it was saying that anyone with dark skin was evil. And I was saying, not exactly. It's people who are racist are saying that these people are bad just because they're different. And then I had a conversation with him about my grandfather, who was Black. He died at 102, and Emmett knew him um, before he passed away a couple of years ago. And I told him how slavery and segregation were, and it got really in depth, and I felt like I wasn't too sure about the conversation because I'm like, he's so young to be talking this in depth about this subject, but he was on the same page as me, and I didn't want to just like throw it under the rug and make it simple and, you know, make it seem not important, because it's a really important topic. But yeah, we have a lot of conversations like that in the car too.
Yeah, kids do a really good job of filtering things too. Maybe it's the only way they can filter it through to what they understand. Because I remember sometime as a child, I mean, other than that time I watched Jaws when I was too young, that overloaded me. But a lot of times, whatever media I took in or adult conversations I secretly listened into, like they didn't, like none of it was more than I could handle, I guess. Like I just ran it through my brain, and like I didn't see the stuff that I wasn't ready to see, I guess. You can certainly go too far, but I think in regards to sharing something that is just true, like we read a book today about hanging people.
That wasn't the whole book.
It wasn't a whole book on hanging people, but in the book there was.
It was a book about William Shakespeare, and they were talking about the anti-Catholicism movement that was going on.
What?
You make it sound really morbid. We read a book on how to kill people. Like, that's not.
No, but when we got to that portion, obviously the question comes up, and it's just try and deliver it as cleanly and accurately as possible, and let them ask the right questions. And it sounds like that's what you do. And though I won't have evidence that it's right for another 20 years probably, I feel like it's right.
Now I'm trying to think back if there's anything as a kid that, I don't know. What are we afraid of?
So it's a stupid thing that jumps out at me, but I remember walking through while my parents were watching a movie, and they said something in the movie, and I got a very classic, I'll tell you when you're older. And so in my head, it became a thing. And of course, they never told me because it was just a dumb movie they were watching when they didn't know I was awake. And so, like, just in my brain, there was this thing I'm not allowed to know. I still don't really know what it is. I'm pretty sure it was a curse word. And so, but that's it. And so it became a much bigger deal than it needed to. And I certainly never processed it. And if it was a curse word, it has not stopped me from using that kind of language. I do it sometimes.
I don't curse. My parents raised me not to, and I've only done it once, and that was when I broke my pinky. Well, technically I did it 3 times because I said it 3 times in a row when I broke my pinky. But I just never got in the habit of saying it, I guess. But I don't think my mom or dad ever told me what they would tell me when I was older. I'm pretty sure they've always told me when I asked. But sometimes my mom would say, "I'll tell you tomorrow." She did that when I was really, really young. And she said that I caught on quick. And the next day I would say, "You told me you would tell me tomorrow, and tomorrow is today." So she stopped trying to not tell me stuff after that point.
I think that would be a good strategy, though, because if it wasn't important enough for you to remember, you wouldn't bring it up, and then you don't have the conversation. And if it was important and you remember, then that's probably a good conversation to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I usually tell Emmett I'll tell him later, and we write down the question on a list of questions, and when we have time to research something, because I don't like to just answer some of his questions, especially if I don't feel like I have my own solid foundation on what he's asking, so that we can look it up. One of my favorite websites is learnersdictionary.com because it has like the simplest definition sometimes for something he's asking about, and it ends up prompting like a whole research project for him so that he can understand what he's asking about.
Cool. Huh. All right. I guess we're going to bring it to a close. I'm really surprised that both of our children stayed in bed.
Linus was asleep.
Well, I didn't want to just blame it on the one kid.
Oh.
Really surprised that one kid stayed in bed.
He was up early.
That's true. But thank you for joining us. And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, it's good to talk to you. And if a hurricane doesn't roll through, we'll see you sometime this week.
Right.
All right.
See you later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See ya.
Have a good evening.